musical culture. So if your musical culture is strong and fruitful, then many more people singing and singing beautifully will be a natural outgrowth of that. But in order to we're in a state now where like we can see these beautiful traditions of congregational music making, and we're like, I wish we had that. That's a powerful thing, and it is a powerful thing. So then you get like, you know, a small mission parish that maybe there's no musicians in the parish, and you know, but they're like we have 8 people and we don't have a choir director and we don't really know how to read music,
right.
and we're gonna do congregational singing. And what I think is that what tends to occur in those instances is they try and they just get discouraged because it's never really that good an experience for anybody. I mean, maybe it is, but
Interesting.
But it's like they're starting at the wrong end. So the way that you get a musical culture to bear fruit is you invest in expertise. You invest in competence, and you build it up, and then you have a few competent people, and then they in turn will give, you know, will bear fruit and train other competent people, and you build that outwards. But
very interesting.
We're at a state right now where like many churches can't find a choir director, and so they're like, well, I guess we'll just, you know, fall back on congregational singing. Like that in my mind is like a guy who loses his job and it's like, I guess I'll fall back on my trust fund. It's like, well, you didn't have a trust fund. You didn't have a trust fund. So, you know, it's like
right.
You like congregational singing is wealth. It's musical. It's musical capital, and you have to build it like that.
That's a tremendous answer. Talia, anything to add?
Well, we do feel really strongly, Father Tom, that the sort of singing that we do in church is we're really drawn to it. And I guess, you know, I would like us to have a chance to talk about what the implications for quarantine are for singing in church generally. But what we saw in so many, this is a little question we'd like to pose to the communities that we go and work with. We ask people, how many of you sing anywhere other than in church? And invariably, a minority will raise their hand. And so what that means is that people are not singing socially the way all humans used to throughout all of human history. I mean, honestly, singing probably came before language. There's a lot of anthropological evidence to suggest that. So we have been doing this for a real long time, but somehow or other we have dropped all of the sort of foundational experiences, the foundational social music making experiences that worship music was the pinnacle and fruit of, again, with the like highly refined and highly stylized act of worship. And so what's happened is that people have begun to have to look to church and church singing for that absolutely essential nutrient. And church has had to become now both the place where we receive the sacraments and the place where we get that kind of social engagement and social music making that we all desperately need. We really need it.
Our church, our worship now has to be both our cathedral and our campfire, but it wasn't ever designed to be both of those. And so it's like we need to be doing this, but you don't necessarily have to start in church. You do it somewhere else.
Well,
that kind of singing shouldn't happen around church, and I don't want to be misunderstood in that way. Yeah.
No, that's and the history bears that out, right? I mean, in the 1940s and 1950s, you had people just coming to church to even sing folk songs and things like that. So, they would do that after church or on a weeknight or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. And forgive me for doing just a little bit of bragging here, but I wanted to share this with you because it aligns perfectly with what you were saying, and that is. During this pandemic, and I do want to talk about the pandemic. I know we want to talk a little bit about that, but obviously all of the parishes have had to scramble for how to do the music. If you only have 5 people in church, you might just have one cantor. If you have 10 people in church, maybe you have a small choir and you have to put them up front and you have to have them social distance, and that means they have to be good singers and so forth. So it gets really complicated. And so in Pennsylvania, of course, in Western PA, sorry guys, we are now at 25, where we can have 25 people. So last Sunday, we didn't have a choir, but we have everybody spread out, everybody, that was in church. There were only 25 people, 23 in the congregation. They were spread out probably 10 feet apart. So I just said, look, if you want to sing, sing, and you should hear the recording of our liturgy. And I think it is a testament to what you said. And that is, they had been hearing, now we've done congregational singing before, especially in the summer, but it just sort of blossomed where I was shocked. And I turned to the priest that was serving with me and I said, I just can't believe how beautifully they're singing. And, we sang all the Traparia, nobody gave a pitch. We just sang. And it was unbelievable. Yeah. So I think that you hit the nail on the head that it has to grow out of a sort of a stable and rich musical culture that's in the parish. 1-855 AF Radio, 1-855-237-2346. Benedict and Lee, we have a few questions that came in through the chat room and in email. The first one is, let me get that here. I think I just lost it. It was essentially, what advice can you give? Oh, here it is. What advice can you give a new convert to begin to learn, to train their voice, and develop a structured understanding of Orthodox music? That's from Kathleen.
I think you should start with that one.
Short answers, because we have other stuff to talk about.
Find a mentor, and find a mentor that can help you do. Maybe find a couple of them, but you can't know whether or not you need medicine unless you go to a doctor to help you diagnose stuff. And then jump in to the deep end, because there's no better training than doing.
And I would add to that, when it can be done, it can, which may not be for some time. Sing in a community choir, not just in a church choir.
That's
definitely
that's very good. Good training. Here's another question that came in from email from Valerie, and that is, how do we continue to inspire and encourage talented young musicians to pursue musical training with the goal of using their expertise in the church?
Well, I think that you, my love, I think you already answered that. Give them responsibilities that are somewhat above them. So, like, really raise the bar. Young people are far more capable than we often give them credit for. I mean, we did this with our kids, and I think my daughter was 14, and 14, maybe 13, and I was in grad school at the time, and we were doing a pro level production of Handel's Messiah, and I'm like, you know what? I want you to sing in this. And she hadn't never tried to do anything like that before. And
that's great.
We absolutely drilled her, and she learned everything. She still knows the piece practically by heart, and
that's amazing.
She did it. You know, so it's like the great works of the Western canon were all sung by like 9 and 10-year-old boys.
Right, right.
So we forget that, and
we have to expect. We have to demonstrate to these kids that we expect the level of competence that we can expect from adults in our musical ensembles, and
that's great.
I'll tell you, they will rise to that expectation.
I agree.
Almost
now,
more
but here
than we will.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful answer. Now, there's a follow-up to this, and that is we see what's happening in some of our parishes, and that is, they're getting smaller and so forth. Some parishes are thriving. So the state of paid choir directors in this country is in flux. And so the follow-up question from Valerie is, do you think there will come a day when it is more the norm and not the exception that the musical leadership in parish is expected to have advanced musical training and will be paid accordingly? And what circumstances need to happen to make that happen? So, in other words, do you think that there will be a raising of qualifications and then a salary that's commensurate with that?
Well, I hope to God,
so.
Because I mean, if we don't, I don't want to predict what will occur, and I don't know. All bets are off right now with pandemic. I don't know how a lot of us are going to emerge from this, but the bottom line is that music making in the church, whether you want everybody in your church to sing all the time, or whether you want a highly skilled choir, to sing very, refined, developed music, and I would argue both of those are good things. Regardless of what your end result is, you need people. It's a refined, specialized skill that people need a lot of training to be able to do. It's not just
right.
And if you want people who will undergo that training and commit, then they need to have some incentives to do it. We've had a brain drain over the last generation. Right. I would argue we've now because we to a great extent don't pay for music in our churches, and when I tell that to our friends in the Protestant and Catholic world, they're completely mystified as to why we would act like this. It's because we don't, on the average, tend to pay for music in the church. We've now we've now created a scenario in which if you are musically musically talented and committed to music as an art and as a calling, then you either have to work somewhere other than the Orthodox Church,
Mm-hmm.
or you need to stop,
Mm-hmm.
or you need to stop doing music and find some other path. Why would we want that? Why would we think that's a good thing? I can't
Right.
even.
Yeah. I mean, the Lord himself says the labor is worth his wages, and that's not just for clergy. And, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And we have to encourage our parishes, to basically say, look, you get what you pay for. I mean, you really, if you want a reliable music program and somebody that's going to commit themselves to it, you need to pay them. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so, our priorities are wrong there. So, Benedict, we want to play one of your pieces here. Actually, I wanted to play two. I'm not sure we'll get to both of them. But what I'd like to do is talk us a little bit through about how you approach composition and where that comes from, and is this based on chant, or is this something entirely new? What we're going to listen to is about 1 minute of your composition from the Divine Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, Holy God. Let's listen, and on the other side of this, we'll talk. Holy God. That's incredible. Beautiful. Benedict, tell us a little bit about how you approach composing, music for the Divine Liturgy. It must be an awesome undertaking. And where do you get your source material? Where do you get your inspiration from? Tell us a little bit about that. I think we lost him. Talia, are you on?
Yes,
I just saw
here
on the board his call dropped. I think he's coming back in. Bobby, let's make sure he gets connected. So while we're getting him on there, Talia, tell us what's your favorite piece from the Divine Liturgy. What piece really resonates with you?
Wow, that's the one I'm listening to. Whichever one it is. You know that experience.
It's like saying, which is your favorite kid, right?
One. Yeah, it's like, if this one is my favorite. No, now this one is my. It really feels that way. But it's interesting to experience that piece in its kind of in the flow of its unfolding. And
well, you can hear the melody constantly weaving through that particular piece. For
sure. And
Benedict, are you back on?
Say this. Oh.
I'm on it. Yeah, I think I'm here.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, you missed a brilliant performance of your holy God.
No, I got to the end of it. I got to where you ended the clip, and then the call died. I was like, oh, I think I've disrupted the order of the universe here.
No, that's okay. Tell us a little bit about how you approach composing this. What, are you looking, you had already talked about some musical influences in your life, and are you basing this on chant? What are you trying to accomplish through a composition like Holy God? Tell us how you go about this.
Yeah, well, the piece was commissioned by the Patron Institute, who is involved in a really heroic effort to try to build up musical culture here in America. And so they commissioned a new liturgy from me in English that was, primarily meant as a performance work, as a thing that would kind of to help to move the sound world into our time and into our context, right. but to draw on the tradition. So it's really, in my mind, I conceived it as kind of an American liturgy in the Russian tradition, or building on it.
Now, I was just going to say, I did hear in some of your pieces some chant, but I'm assuming, like the tradition of Rachmaninoff, some pieces are loosely based on chant, some pieces are pure chant, and some pieces are freely composed. Is this how you're approaching that?
Yeah, well, in the liturgy, only really two movements are actually literally based on a chant, on a pre-existing.
Right.
So almost all the melodies are as it were original, except for two movements. It's the Alleluia and the Communion hymn, I believe. And I do quote a few other tunes elsewhere, but it's certainly influenced by the sound world of chant, and by my sense of the way chant works with the language, and the way there's this kind of really tight relationship between melody and language, and so in that way, the liturgy is certainly based on chant-like motifs and chant-like melodies, but most of the actual melodies are new.
Now, even though your piece is a massive work, and it requires voices that have the ability to perform that in the way that is necessary for that music, have you ever thought about taking some of your music in the liturgy and simplifying that a little bit so that it could be performed by smaller church choirs and become maybe part of the repertoire of American Orthodoxy?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I from the beginning, I wrote the liturgy with the thought that kind of the musical content of it could be condensed in some way or translated to a different context. I mean, so yes, it's for, and in fact, there's a there's a church in Louisville, St. Michael's in Louisville has expressed interest in commissioning me to actually do that for their community.
That's great.
So that may occur in the next few years, but
I don't know if you know, but I directed that choir there for 4 years.
Did you?
Many years ago. I did.
Wonderful.
I did. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
we really have a really have a wonderful relationship with.
I know you do, Stephen Jacobs, and
yeah.
That's my wife's home parish, so I know that parish very well. Yeah.
That's so great.
So I want the listeners to indulge me just one more time here, just a little bit. And I want Bobby, let's cue up It Is Truly Meet. This is one of my favorite pieces that is from the Divine Liturgy that you wrote, Benedict. I really love this piece. And I love the video on YouTube of you conducting it because your face looks ebullient. You look angelic when you are conducting this one. I've watched it several times, and the joy in your face is matching the joy of the music. Bobby, let's listen.
Ancestors, fathers, patriarchs, prophets, apostles, preachers, evangelists, martyrs, confessors, ascetics, and every righteous spirit made perfect in faith. Especially for our most holy, most pure, most blessed and glorious Lady Theotokos, and ever Virgin Mary.
I love that piece. It's beautiful because it just has evokes a lot of different aspects of the beauty of Orthodox music from many different traditions. You can see that coming in all over the place, and I love that piece. Guys, I have 2 more questions, okay? And because we're already late, and we want to get you home to your kids, so bear with me for 2 more questions. Number 1,
no problem.
Tell us about the Artifact Institute. Why did you start it, and what's the goal of the Artifact Institute? What are you trying to do there?
Absolutely. I think we lost Benedict again, but I think he's on the trail of catching up with us. But I can start that one. Yeah.
Sure, please.
The Artifact Institute was a sort of a brainchild some really beautiful collaborative work with other fellow artists who are in the church, particularly Deacon Nicholas Kotar, who's a writer and a podcaster, of course, for Ancient Faith. And he and we and him kind of felt as though there was something that we could help the church with, and Benedict likes to talk about it as the margins. And we know what goes on inside the church building, but there's a certain sense of what goes on outside the church building is a little undefined. And of course, every culture throughout history that had a really distinct identity had those things that they did outside of the church building, and how far removed those things were from the church building varied, and there was kind of concentric circles. And I like to use the metaphor of bread and wine. Those are the sacraments. Those are the most the most mysterious transformation of matter of this world happens with those two materials. But bread, it's not wheat berries and it's not grapes. It's those two things combined, but combined in a somewhat mysterious way. With life in this earth, and they get made outside of the church. We don't have an oven in the church. We don't have a wine vat in the church. They're made outside of the church, and they're brought into the church and sanctified and offered. And everything about our culture ought to be able to be brought into the church and sanctified and offered. But as we have begun to sort of give over the job of culture, of creating culture to highly accomplished and highly specialized creative class, we have exceptional entertainment and exceptionally high culture in our global world here. But what we've kind of abdicated the responsibility to people who seem obviously more qualified than the average person to create culture. Well, we didn't realize that trade-off for very high quality was going to leave us lacking in some really fundamental things. And we are not very poor anymore. We're not hungry and naked, and we're sick, but we have a lot of medicine available. But what we are now, it seems, is depressed and isolated, and no more so than now, and anxious and addicted. And those are all things that we were able to enjoy meeting the needs of because we were trying to meet other really practical needs with our culture. Villages existed so that people could consolidate resources. It was a really practical need to live in a village. Well, we don't have that need anymore. And if we don't have that need anymore, then how are we going to solve those sort of psychological and spiritual and social needs? So it turns out we actually have to do that deliberately for ourselves. That's what I want to ask you is, can you give us an example of what deliberately you are doing or creating? Give us one example so that the listeners can kind of put a face on this. What would the Artifact Institute be doing to create that culture? Yeah, well, to a certain extent, you have to do it on a couple levels. And so just recently, because so many people were not able to attend services for Pascha, our family included, even though we live here at the monastery, there was a need. We were missing out on a kind of culture. And so in order to meet that need, we just focused the resolution a little smaller. And we created a ritualized meal that was able to bring a little bit of that really intentional sort of gratitude and sort of formality that we get at its highest form in the services into our home and into the Paschal meal, that connected us to what was happening in church, even though we couldn't be there. And these are all this we called it an order for a home Pascha, and it was partly narrative, and it was partly prayers taken from the new prayer book for Orthodox Christians published by St. Tikhon's Monastery Press. And they were for very specific things, prayers for eggs and cheese, prayers for meat, prayers for putting clothes on. And so to have those little ritualized moments in our home Pascha meant that we had an ability to connect to what was happening in church that we wouldn't have were we just, missing it or, watching online. And it gave us a way to sort of enchant that little sort of center of our domestic life, the home table. And so at Artifact, what we would like to do is, because we're all somewhat, we have some experience and some expertise and can teach. What we would like to do is to be able to guide people in crafting these kind of experiences for themselves, informed by their own heritage and their own, actual, their communities and their tastes and their interests. But in a way that gives it a doorway to share those tastes and interests and experiences and heritages with the people around them to create basically microcultures. And we feel as though the church, if we're going to make bread and wine to bring into church, well, we have to do that. We have to do that somewhere. And it really is home and the collections of homes that are a community that foundation is built. And so we felt as though we could begin to at least offer people a pathway to do to learn the kind of things they could learn. And honestly, Father Tom, a lot of it is just teaching people to give themselves permission to do something beautiful for the people that they love. And that's really remarkable. Yeah.
I love that. Having grown up in the Slavic tradition, of course, I'm thinking of Christmas Eve, and we have the tradition of the Holy Supper, Sviatý Večer.
Absolutely.
And that's, something that we pass on to our children and our families. And so we need those opportunities to express our faith at home. And I think that's really brilliant. Benedict, you're back.
Yep.
Okay. So here's the last question. This is kind of a little bit of a downer question, but I know that we were talking about online and so forth about the pandemic. So first of all, want to make sure that you and your family is everybody okay and you're healthy and
thank God,
and
we're fine.
Excellent. Good. So give us a little bit and give everyone, especially the singers, a little bit of practical guidance about getting back to church. Some of our churches are starting to open up. And as I said, we are grappling with the issue of singing. There have been some articles that came out. There was that very tragic incident in Washington where there was a professional chorus or a community chorus, and they, two people died, but later on we found out that they were all sitting very close and they were touching one another and so forth. So, and now then you have some scientific information saying, well, maybe this is a little bit overblown and the threat is not as great as we thought, but we still have to be careful. So give us your experience and wisdom in these days of COVID-19.
I mean, we're
singing.
We're all trying to figure this out too. There was a great article that came out. I think it was today by Robin Freeman on the OCA website to just that kind of that just kind of summarizes the current state of the debate about whether it's safe to sing in church or not. And if you haven't seen the article, it's worth reading it. I think it's just on the OCO website. And she does a very good job of kind of framing the problem. The basic problem is that, as far as we can tell, at least from the data that has been interpreted so far, it's really seeming like it's unsafe to sing in public in a group context, almost period. Now, there are different narratives. This data certainly may be incomplete. So I'm not saying that this is the absolute answer, but as far as but we don't know answers to lots of things right now.
Right.
And
right.
so it seems that the general opinion in the musical community is that group singing is too dangerous for maybe even the next 12 to 18 months, or basically until there's a vaccine. So that's really bad news for a lot of us, and we're all trying to deal with that and figure out like is this the end? Are we going to be able to? I mean, like I know a lot of the choirs in New York have actually basically just canceled the entirety of their 2021 their 21 season. So it's bad. So what I would say is that based on the current data and public opinion, we should really take care before we decide we're going to have a church choir again. Now, there's certainly things that people can do to mitigate it, like maybe having open air services. But I mean, I don't want to recommend anything specific because I'm not an expert. I don't know the answers.
Right.
So, but what I would say is that we shouldn't allow this to be the end. And I think this is partly okay, we may not be able to do worship the way we understand worship for some time. We may be able to have a priest and a chanter and a few people in church. It may be that it'd be better to put any singers in in another room and use amplification. I don't know. But it seems like so this is really a sad thing to have to be dealing with. But in any sad thing, there are also opportunities, and it seems to me, just from where we stand right now, and like our opinions may change in a week. I don't know, but that we have a chance now to kind of to think about why do we go to church? What do we need from church? We can say, okay, we need the sacraments, okay, right? Because that's the one thing that only a priest can do, and so there's that. But then there's the other elements. There's the communal aspects. There's the ritualized kind of approach to life. I mean, Father Schmemann says it's not about the sacraments, but about the sacramental life, and about all of life as an offering to God, as something Eucharistic. So maybe it's time to take that seriously and say, we need to ritualize our daily lives in some way. We need to, and so what we tried to do for the Paschal order was to ritualize the Paschal meal. Well, let's ritualize the meal on Sunday, and it might be as the society reopens a bit and people start being able to gather, that individuals can take a calculated risk and say, we're going to get together with this other family, and we're going to have a ritualized Sunday meal, and we're going to sing together, and we're going to pray together
in the household.
Yeah. Because it seems like it's not a risk. It's not a risk that a responsible institution ought to take, or at least ought to take lightly. but it's a risk that we can assess and maybe take on the individual level and say, so yes, we can't have the Eucharist, but maybe there's other ways to do that and to fill the needs where they need to be filled. We do need to sing together. We do need to pray together. We do need to eat together,
Yes.
but we don't maybe have to do all those things in church.
Talia, any last words to add to that?
Well, we really hope that this time of constraint and I guess that's the best word for it. Creativity can't happen without constraint. And if there's one thing that has really sort of typified the modern, life, it's freedom from constraint to a great extent. And all of the resources we've had available to us as modern people, you notice a certain malaise. And so if we're able to withstand the genuine, tragedy of isolation, which is it may, in fact, be the greatest tragedy, isolation. If we're able to withstand that, and we can do that with some sense of wanting to take that constraint and turn it into some creative act, then I think we will have done, we will have helped God in the process of making the evil good by his goodness. And I trust the people that I have seen, independent of irrespective of their skill level, people have an extraordinary capacity to do beautiful things and to love beautiful things. And in this time of being isolated, I think that desire has been heightened. And so we hope that, the message of sort of like individual empowerment, that please get better at this, get better at singing, love God more and know why you do, and love church more, partly by your absence from it, that will come out of this with a sense of having been enriched in a way that we would never have been had we not suffered this.
Thank you for those beautiful words, closing words, much to think about. Both of you, thank you very much for all of your talents and your vision that you are giving us as Orthodox Christians in North America. We look forward to hearing more good things coming out of your work with the choirs across America. Benedict with your compositions, Talia with making us better singers and more attentive, and also creating a culture that can allow us to bring the richness of the Orthodox faith into our homes. Thank you both so much. I'm so appreciative of your time this evening.
Thank you, Father Tom. It was a joy.
All right. God bless you.
You do as well.
I appreciate it very much. Our many thanks to Benedict and Talia Sheehan for joining us this evening and sharing their work and perspective on Orthodox music and culture in America. Thanks to Bobby for engineering the program, for everyone in the chat room, and for those listening in, and for those who called in. Music is a most glorious aspect of our Orthodox Christian faith. It has the dual purpose of uplifting our souls and teaching us the deep things of God. As St. Basil the Great wrote, though somewhat paraphrased, "For when the Holy Spirit saw that mankind was ill-inclined toward virtue, and that we were heedless of the righteous life because of our inclination to pleasure, he blended the delight of melody with doctrine, in order that through the pleasantness and softness of the sound, we might unknowingly receive what was useful in the words, like the sweetness of honey with medicine. For this purpose, these harmonious melodies of the Psalms have been designed for us, that those who are singing may in reality be educating their souls." And that's our show for tonight. Remember to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/ancientfaithtoday. Share out our program after that's posted, give us your feedback, and contact us with any ideas or persons or topics that you might want to hear about. Join us next Tuesday for another edition of Ancient Faith Today. Good night, everybody.